"I told you I don't like this food," I said, my frustration clear. "You're harassing me by making things I don't enjoy, aren't you?" I added, feeling overwhelmed. "But your husband likes it," she replied dismissively. "Just cook something else right now," I insisted, my patience wearing thin. I had reached my breaking point. The constant yelling and screaming from my mother-in-law when she didn't like something had become unbearable. I wasn't sure if I could handle her sarcasm and criticism for the rest of my life. I had resigned myself to enduring her bullying, but then something happened that changed everything. "My name is Ellen. My husband George and I have been married for 3 years, and we were living with my parents at their house. George, often away on business trips, was currently gone, and though I used to feel uneasy without him, had become so busy that I barely noticed his absence. My days were packed from dawn until dusk. I would wake up early to prepare a meal for my father-in-law, who rose with the sun. While he ate, I would clean the house and do the laundry. After he finished, I'd immediately clean up the dishes. Once the household chores were done, I'd rush to my part-time job. When I got home at 5 p.m., I'd cook dinner again, clean the house, and do laundry one more time. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. But the most draining part of my life was the constant bullying from my mother-in-law. Although she didn't work and spent all her time at home, she did no housework. My husband once told me he couldn't even remember what his mother's cooking tasted like, indicating she hadn't done much housework when he was growing up. Despite her inactivity, my mother-in-law had a knack for criticizing everything I did. She was meticulous about the food I prepared and always found fault with the cleanliness of the house. It felt like her hobby to belittle me. Known in the neighborhood as a show-off, she would parade around in ill-fitting jewelry, and though the neighbors would compliment her, they didn't genuinely think she looked good. They were hesitant to upset her, perhaps out of respect for my father-in-law, who was well-liked and involved in the community. He had been an executive at a prominent local company and was still connected with many people from his professional life. Though my father-in-law never imposed his will, my mother-in-law's overbearing nature was often overlooked by the neighbors, who chose not to confront her. Feeling isolated, I had no one to turn to in the neighborhood. However, when my father-in-law fell ill and was diagnosed with advanced cancer, my world shifted. I was grateful for him, who was the complete opposite of my mother-in-law. Despite his illness, his kindness and genuine concern for me stood out starkly against the backdrop of my mother-in-law's cruelty. I knew that our financial stability was largely thanks to my father-in-law's past contributions. To show my gratitude, I tried to take care of him as best as I could. I made sure to keep him engaged with conversations, played cards with him, and prepared easy-to-eat meals to ensure he received the nutrition he needed. He was always appreciative and often expressed his thanks. "Thank you," he would say. "I'm so happy every day because of you." No, I would respond. "I'm just doing what I can." "I'm sorry for the burden my wife has put on you," he would continue. "She doesn't do much around the house." It was clear that my father-in-law was concerned about my mother-in-law's lack of effort. His gentle nature made it hard for him to address her shortcomings directly. Still, it was comforting to know he understood how poorly she treated me. "I'm sorry for leaving everything to you, Ellen," he said. "My wife should be doing a better job. You don't have to force yourself to take care of me." "Please don't say that," I reassured him. "I just want to repay you for everything you've done for me." His eyes welled up with tears as he held my hand and said, "Thank you." But then everything changed. My father-in-law's condition suddenly deteriorated, and he was rushed to the hospital in an emergency. When the ambulance arrived, he was already in a coma. The doctors informed us that his prognosis was uncertain and that we needed to prepare ourselves for the worst. The sudden turn of events left me in a state of panic, struggling to process the gravity of the situation. I couldn't stop crying when I saw my father-in-law, his face etched with pain. I felt a pang of sympathy for my mother-in-law, believing she must be deeply distressed. I asked her how she was coping. However, her response was chillingly unexpected. "I'm sure he'll never recover from this, but at least his inheritance will be enough," she said, her words cold and calculating. Her callousness enraged me. Meanwhile, my father-in-law remained unconscious, though his breathing was steady. I visited him daily, speaking to him as much as I could, hoping that somehow my words might reach him and prompt a response. Yet he showed no signs of waking. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, never came to see him. When I encouraged her to visit, she would respond dismissively. "Don't tell me what to do. I'm too busy every day. Spending time at the hospital is a waste." Whenever I tried to persuade her, she would lash out with harsh comments. She even had the audacity to instruct me, "Hey Ellen, you're bringing clean clothes for him every day, right? Just pretend I did it. Don't make the mistake of saying you did." Her intention was clear. She wanted to appear benevolent while avoiding any actual responsibility. "He'll never wake up, and his inheritance will be mine," she declared. "Don't talk nonsense to people about it." It was evident that my mother-in-law's sole concern was the inheritance, revealing just how little she cared about my father-in-law's well-being. I was so infuriated by my mother-in-law's selfishness that I decided I had to take action. With my father-in-law no longer at home, her bullying had intensified. "Why aren't you starting dinner yet? It's too early for that," she snapped. "I'm heading to the hospital now and will be back soon to cook." "You really piss me off, Ellen," she continued. "I've told you countless times that the old man is only good for leaving me his money. He doesn't need visits or sympathy." Her harsh words about my father-in-law were too much to bear. I wanted to retort but managed to keep my composure. Then I received a call from the hospital with the news I had been hoping for. "Is it true?" asked, heart racing. Thank God. My father-in-law had finally emerged from his coma, and remarkably, his condition had stabilized. I rushed to the hospital with my mother-in-law. As we entered his room, I greeted him warmly. "Welcome back. It's so good to see you." He responded, "Me too. I'm sorry for all the trouble." My father-in-law smiled peacefully at me. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, put on an act of joy and said, "Honey, I've been taking care of you every day." "I see," he replied, noting that his clothes were clean. "You did all this for me?" "Yes, I did everything," she said, looking at me expectantly, as if she wanted me to agree with her performance. Ignored her silent cues and let her leave. It was clear from her expression that she was frustrated with me for not playing along. My father-in-law noticed her irritation, but chose not to comment. "Well, I'm going to go now," my mother-in-law said, her mood sour. "I have some errands to run, so please take care of things here, Ellen." She cast one last annoyed glance at my father-in-law before leaving the room. "Are you okay, Ellen?" he asked, noticing the tension. "Why do you ask?" I responded, puzzled. "My wife's attitude seemed strange," he said. "I thought it was you who took care of me all this time." I realized that he had seen through the pretense. Had been keeping evidence of my mother-in-law's actions, planning to share it when the time was right. I hadn't expected to reveal it so soon. "Well, I'm sorry if this disturbs you," I said, pulling out my voice recorder. "But please listen to this." I played the recording for him, feeling a mix of guilt and relief as he heard my mother-in-law's true voice. I knew my father-in-law would find it painful to hear everything my mother-in-law had said on the recording. Her words were filled with malice and greed. "When my husband dies, I want all the inheritance for myself. I want him to die soon. I don't want to take care of him. It's a waste of time." As I looked at my father-in-law with concern, I was surprised to see him laughing. "She's turned into such a greedy woman, hasn't she?" he said with a chuckle. "I wouldn't give any of my inheritance to someone like that." Despite his laughter, I could sense his deep anger and hurt. A few days later, my father-in-law's condition stabilized, and he was discharged from the hospital. Once home, my mother-in-law made a point of telling him how difficult it had been to care for him every day. My father-in-law listened in silence, not disputing her complaints. Shortly after, my husband returned from his business trip to visit his father. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said as he arrived, "but it's good to see you're doing okay." "Yes, I'm fine," my father-in-law replied. "Thanks to you and Ellen for looking out for me. I'm really glad you're here." My father-in-law seemed genuinely grateful for our support. From then on, my husband and I continued to care for him. Although he made some progress, his health remained fragile. I could see my father-in-law growing weaker each day. The reality of his approaching farewell was becoming clear. My husband and I made a pact to do our utmost for him until we had to say goodbye. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law remained unchanged. She continued to neglect my father-in-law's care, spending her time away from home. It seemed she believed that with my husband's return, she could relax and let us handle everything. The fact that both my father-in-law and husband were home made it harder for her to assert her dominance over me. As my father-in-law's condition deteriorated, he ate less and less. In his final moments, he managed to whisper his last words to us. "Thank you both so much. I've left a will for you to read after I'm gone. I appreciate your care until the end." With those words, his life came to an end. At his funeral, I was deeply moved by the sheer number of people who came to pay their respects. It was clear that my father-in-law had been greatly respected at work and cherished by many. In contrast, my mother-in-law seemed unnervingly lively. She acted as though she was the one who had brought everyone together, and even boasted about taking care of him until the very end. Her lack of tears and her disingenuous display of grief were unsettling. I wanted to confront her about her behavior in front of the attendees, but I refrained from causing a scene at my father-in-law's grave. The funeral went smoothly, and I was relieved that my father-in-law could rest in peace. However, when we returned home, I noticed a drastic shift in my mother-in-law's attitude. My mother-in-law's attitude changed drastically after the funeral. She was visibly exhausted and spoke with a mix of relief and satisfaction. "I'm so tired. Funerals are always so depressing," she said. "But now that I have the inheritance, I can look forward to the rest of my life." It was clear she believed that all of my father-in-law's inheritance was rightfully hers. She seemed in high spirits, making plans for her newfound wealth. That's when my husband presented her with the will. "I'm sorry to change the mood," he said, "but Dad left this will before he passed. I haven't read it yet, but I think it has something to do with the inheritance." "Don't need to see the will. It's all mine," she replied confidently. "Let's just sit down and read it," my husband suggested, trying to calm the situation. When my husband carefully opened the will, my mother-in-law grabbed the paper roughly and began to read. Her expression shifted from confidence to shock as she read the contents. What is this?" she stammered, her face going pale. I took the will from her trembling hands and read it myself. It stated that I was to inherit everything my father-in-law had. It also mentioned that the inheritance was to be used by both me and George as a couple, acknowledging my care for him while my husband was away. This made perfect sense. My father-in-law's gratitude was evident in his will. "But all of it," my mother-in-law protested, her voice rising in outrage. "This isn't right. How can two strangers get everything?" She accused me of forging the will and made vicious remarks, calling me names and claiming that I must have manipulated my father-in-law. "Hey Mom, stop," my husband finally said, his anger rising. "You've never taken care of Dad. Ellen did. That's why he was so grateful to her." My mother-in-law, now hysterical, began to cry uncontrollably. Please, at least leave me the house." I felt a pang of sympathy for my mother-in-law, knowing how hard it must be to lose the home she had lived in for so long. To ease her distress, I decided to offer her a small portion of my inheritance. "You can keep the house," I said, looking her directly in the eyes. "I understand you're struggling financially, so I'll give you some money as well. But please, don't act like you did before. "We're moving out and you'll need to manage on your own." Her reaction shifted dramatically once she learned she would be receiving both the house and some money. "Oh, thank God. I was afraid I'd lose the house too," she exclaimed, her mood lightening. "If you're leaving, then get out already." With that, she returned to her old, unpleasant self. I was frustrated by how easily I had been manipulated by her false tears, but the thought of no longer living with her outweighed my irritation over the portion of the inheritance I was giving away. A week later, we began our move. We planned to temporarily live in an apartment while searching for a suitable location to build a new house. Thanks to the inheritance from my father-in-law, we would be able to construct a beautiful home. I also wanted to build a small altar in his honor to show my gratitude. I was thrilled at the prospect of a new chapter free from the constant scrutiny of my mother-in-law. On the other hand, she struggled to adjust to her new circumstances. Despite losing her primary residence, she continued her lavish spending habits, living beyond her means. As word of our departure spread, the neighborhood's attitude toward my mother-in-law shifted. The neighbors, once wary of her, began spreading rumors, further isolating her. Her extravagant lifestyle eventually depleted her savings and pension. She had to sell the house she had fought so hard to keep, and now, with no home or job, her current situation is unknown to me. As far as I'm concerned, she is no longer my concern. I have no interest in where she goes or what she does from now on.